This happened on Halloween night, 1993, in Columbus, Ohio. The kind of autumn evening that smells like wet leaves and candle wax. I was 19 then, a college sophomore at Ohio State, trying to make extra money any way I could. Babysitting was easy, predictable work, or so I thought. That night, I got a last-minute call from a woman named Mrs. Latham. She said her regular sitter had canceled and begged me to watch her 2 kids for just a few hours. She sounded polite but rushed, breathless, like she'd been crying. They lived in a neighborhood called Northbridge, a quiet stretch of large brick houses about 20 minutes from campus. I almost said no. I had a costume party to go to later and didn't love the idea of missing it. But she offered $80 cash for the night, which was good money in '93. So I said yes. She gave me the address, said her husband would meet me there since she had to run out early.
The house sat on a tree-lined street, every porch glowing with orange light and jack-o'-lanterns. The Latham's place was the only one without decorations, dark except for the porch light and the faint flicker of a TV inside. When I knocked, a man opened the door. He was in his late 40s, thinning hair, wearing a brown cardigan over a white shirt. He smiled, but his eyes were red, tired. "You must be Julie," he said. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." He introduced himself as Mr. Latham and led me into a warmly lit living room filled with floral furniture that smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. The 2 kids, Eric, 8, and Lacey, 5, were watching a VHS tape of Hocus Pocus in their pajamas. They were polite, shy, but sweet. Mr. Latham said he'd be gone until about midnight, and that Mrs. Latham was staying with her sister for the night. He left me a sheet of emergency numbers and said, "Don't answer the phone unless it's us, and keep the doors locked. It's Halloween." Then he was gone. By 9 o'clock, the kids were asleep upstairs, and the house had gone still, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I sat on the couch doing homework, every now and then glancing at the baby monitor's red light blinking softly on the table. Then, the phone rang. I hesitated. It was an old cream-colored landline on the kitchen wall, the kind with a curly cord that stretches across the room. I picked it up. "Hello?" For a few seconds, there was only static, like wind blowing across the line. Then a man's voice, calm but low. "Hi, Julie. This is Mr. Latham. Just checking in. Everything okay?" I felt relief wash over me. "Yeah, everything's fine. Kids are asleep." "Good," he said. "If anyone knocks on the door, don't answer. Some people have been going around tonight. You understand?" "Sure," I said. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I went back to my notes, trying to focus, but something about his tone unsettled me. The way he said, "Some people have been going around," too vague, too rehearsed. About 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. "Julie," the same voice said, "have you checked on the children?" "Yes," I replied. "They're fine, sleeping." He chuckled softly. "Good. You should go upstairs again, though, just to make sure." I frowned. "Why? Did you hear something?" He didn't answer right away. Then, in that same calm tone, "Because sometimes they wake up." Click. The line went dead.
I felt a cold prickling crawl up the back of my neck. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just being an anxious parent. But something about his voice sounded different. Slower. Thicker, like he was forcing it lower. Still, I went upstairs. The hallway smelled faintly of the kids' shampoo and candle smoke from the neighbors outside. Both children were asleep in their beds, breathing evenly. Nothing seemed wrong. When I came back down, the phone was off the hook. I hadn't touched it. The receiver lay on the counter, gently swinging by its cord.
I hung it up, heart thudding, and decided to call Mrs. Latham's number from the sheet on the counter just to confirm everything was okay. It rang 3 times before someone answered. A woman's voice, faint, strained, whispered, "Hello?" "Hi, Mrs. Latham? This is Julie. I'm babysitting for you tonight." There was a pause. Then, "I'm sorry. Who?" I repeated myself. She sucked in a sharp breath. "No, sweetheart, you must have the wrong number. I don't have any children." My stomach flipped. "But Mr. Latham said—" She cut me off, voice trembling. "There's no Mr. Latham here. I think you need to call the police." Then she hung up.
For a long moment, I just stood there, the kitchen spinning around me. I looked at the list again. Same number, same handwriting. That's when the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer, but something made me. Maybe fear, maybe the thought of the kids upstairs. "Julie," the voice said, slower now, distorted. "You shouldn't have called her." My throat went dry. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a faint creak, like a door hinge. "Go upstairs," he said softly. "They're not asleep anymore."
I dropped the phone and bolted for the stairs 2 steps at a time. My heart hammered in my ears. At the top, the hallway was dark. The nightlight in the kids' room was off. "Eric? Lacey?" I whispered. No answer. I stepped inside. The beds were empty. The window above Lacey's bed was open, curtain fluttering in the cold wind. A faint draft carried the smell of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. I rushed to the window, looked out into the backyard. The swing set creaked slowly back and forth, empty. No movement. Then, behind me, the phone downstairs started ringing again, loud, relentless.
I didn't want to go back down, but I had to. The kids had to be somewhere, maybe hiding, maybe scared. When I reached the bottom step, the front door stood wide open. Cold air seeped in from the porch. The pumpkins outside flickered in the dark. The phone still rang. I picked it up with a shaking hand. A whisper, "They're outside." I ran to the porch, yelling their names. The yard was empty, quiet, except for the rustle of leaves and the sound of distant laughter from trick-or-treaters several streets over. Then I saw it. Footprints in the dew-covered grass, small and barefoot, leading away from the porch toward the woods behind the house. I grabbed a flashlight from the counter and followed them, my breath clouding in the cold air. The beam cut through the darkness, catching bits of fog and fallen leaves. About 20 yards into the trees, I found Eric, shivering in his pajamas behind a stump. He was crying, eyes wide. "Where's your sister?" I asked. He pointed deeper into the woods. "The man said he had candy." I felt the world tilt sideways. "What man?" He just shook his head. Then I heard it. The faint ring of the house phone again, echoing from the open front door behind us, over and over. And beneath it, a voice, low,
almost crooning, carrying through the trees, Lacey.
I scooped up Eric and ran back to the house, slamming the door, locking every bolt I could find. I called 911, stammering out what had happened. The operator told me to stay on the line, stay calm, police were on the way. While I was talking, something hit the window. Thunk. Then again. I turned. The phone cord stretched tight between my hand and the wall as I stepped closer. Outside, under the porch light, a man stood, or what looked like a man. He wore a plain rubber Halloween mask, pale and featureless, except for 2 black eye holes. In one hand, he held something small, Lacey's pink slipper. He tilted his head slightly, as if listening. Then, with slow precision, he reached up, placed the slipper on the porch railing, and backed away into the dark. I didn't move. I couldn't. The police sirens arrived 5 minutes later.
They searched the area for hours. Dogs, flashlights, helicopters, until just before dawn. They found Lacey 2 blocks away, sitting in the neighbor's shed, unharmed but dazed. She told the officers a man had asked her to wait for the others. She couldn't describe him, said he was wearing a shiny white face. They never caught him. The number that had called the house traced back to a disconnected payphone outside a closed-down diner nearly 8 miles away. No fingerprints, no leads. The real Lathams, the family who owned the house, had moved out months earlier after separating. The home had been listed for rent, but nobody had scheduled a showing that night. The sheriff said someone must have known the place was empty and lured me there. He couldn't explain the kids or how they'd gotten inside.
I moved back to campus a week later, changed my number, never babysat again. But sometimes, late at night, I think about the voice on the phone. How he knew my name, my movements, the exact moments I went upstairs. Years later, I read a short article in the local paper about similar calls happening across the state. Unknown voices, Halloween night, babysitters home alone. Most were dismissed as pranks. But one detail always stuck out. In several cases, witnesses reported seeing a man in a plain, pale mask watching houses from across the street. And in every one of them, the last call came from a disconnected line.
I still don't answer the phone after midnight on Halloween. And sometimes, when I walk past an old payphone outside a gas station, I swear I can hear the faint hum of static and a soft voice whispering my name, Julie.
This happened on Halloween night, 1978, in a quiet town called Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania. Population maybe 2,000, tops. Back then, people still trusted their neighbors. You could leave your front door unlocked and not think twice. I was 17 that year, a senior in high school, and my only plan for Halloween was to help my mom run the annual costume contest at the firehouse. It was a small-town tradition, the kind of event with orange punch, hay bales, and kids in plastic masks that smelled like chemicals. The firemen strung up paper bats, my mom baked pumpkin bread, and the mayor himself judged the costumes. That night started like every other Halloween. The air was sharp with wood smoke, and the trees looked like black veins against the sunset. I remember wearing a flannel shirt and cheap vampire fangs that made me drool when I talked. By 7:30, the firehouse was packed. Kids laughed, parents mingled, and the DJ, a guy from the local radio station, played Monster Mash on a loop. Then he walked in. The Pumpkin Man. That's what everyone called him later, but at the time, he was just some guy in a black suit with an oversized jack-o'-lantern head. Not a plastic mask, but a real carved pumpkin, hollowed out and fitted over his shoulders. The candlelight inside flickered through uneven eye holes. People laughed and clapped when he entered. The costume looked clever, handmade, creepy in a good way. He didn't speak, just stood there, slightly tilted, like he was listening to a song nobody else could hear. My mom even said, "That one's going to win." He did. The mayor handed him a blue ribbon and a $5 diner voucher. Pumpkin Man nodded once and shuffled out the door. Everyone thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Around 10 that night, after the contest ended, I helped my mom clean up. We stacked folding chairs, swept the floor, and loaded leftover cupcakes into boxes. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for our family's old Chevy Nova and a few cars down the street. The cold had settled in, and a fog was starting to roll off the creek that cut behind town. As we were leaving, I saw him again. The Pumpkin Man stood across the street, just beyond the yellow light of a lamppost. Same black suit, same jack-o'-lantern head glowing faintly from within. He wasn't moving, just facing the firehouse, perfectly still. I nudged my mom. "Look," I whispered. But when she turned, he was gone. She said I was imagining things. Maybe she was right. We lived about 2 miles out of town, down a gravel road lined with sycamores that looked skeletal after sunset. When we got home, my dad had already gone to bed. He worked the early shift at the mill, and my little sister, Lily, was asleep upstairs. Mom told me to lock up and make sure the porch light was on for trick-or-treaters still wandering late. That's when I noticed something strange. Our jack-o'-lantern, the one Lily and I carved that afternoon, wasn't on the porch anymore. The candle was still burning, but the pumpkin had been moved, sitting now at the edge of the driveway, near the mailbox. Its grin faced the house. I figured some neighborhood kid was messing around. I went out, picked it up. The sides were cold and slick with dew, and set it back on the porch. As I turned to go back inside, I heard it, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. I froze. Someone was standing halfway down the driveway. Tall, dark silhouette, faint orange glow where a face should be. The Pumpkin Man. I blinked, and he was gone again, swallowed by fog and trees. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house felt amplified. Every gust of wind against the siding made my chest tighten. I kept replaying what I'd seen. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some kid had followed us home. But how would anyone know where we lived? Morning brought false comfort. The sun burned off the fog, and everything looked normal again. Until my mom went outside to get the paper. She called me to the porch. The pumpkin, ours, was back at the end of the driveway. Only now, the face was different. The grin had been carved wider, deeper, and the eyes slanted downward, angry. The fresh cuts were wet and sticky, like someone had done it overnight with a kitchen knife. Mom thought I'd done it as a joke. I swore I hadn't. She sighed and tossed the thing into the trash bin.
2 nights later, word spread that a girl from the next town over had gone missing. She'd been at the same costume contest, dressed as a witch. Her mom said she never came home. The sheriff organized search parties. Everyone whispered that she'd run off with a boyfriend or gotten into a stranger's car. Nobody mentioned the Pumpkin Man at first, but I did. I told my friend Rick about the figure I saw by the road that night.
He laughed, said it was probably Old Man Trask, a local weirdo who sold pumpkins from a roadside stand and liked to scare kids. Except Trask had died that summer. Heart attack. A week passed. The missing girl's face was on every telephone pole. Then, one afternoon after school, I found something in our mailbox. It wasn't a letter, it was a photograph, folded twice. It showed the firehouse from Halloween night, shot from across the street. In the corner of the picture, barely visible in shadow, was our Chevy Nova, and standing behind it, watching, was a faint figure with a glowing pumpkin head. I stared at that photo for a long time, hands trembling. The edges smelled faintly of smoke and earth. I brought it inside, showed Mom. She went pale, told me not to tell Dad, said she'd handle it. She drove straight to the sheriff's office, but they brushed it off, said it was likely a prank photo from one of the local kids. That night, the phone rang twice around 11 p.m. When I picked up, there was only breathing on the line, slow, hollow, like air moving through a tube. Then a faint sound, a match being struck. I slammed the phone down. Halloween decorations started coming down around town. People were trying to move on. But something about that week felt wrong, too quiet, too watchful. On November 5th, a hunter found a burnt pumpkin in the woods about half a mile from Hollow Creek Road. Inside it were scraps of melted fabric that looked like a witch costume. The missing girl was never found.
Years passed. I graduated, moved away, tried to forget. But Hollow Creek doesn't forget. In 1982, another person disappeared on Halloween, a middle-aged man walking home from the bar. Witnesses said they saw someone in a pumpkin mask following him near the creek. The man's wallet was found days later beside a hollowed-out pumpkin, candles still burning inside. Police connected the two incidents, called it coincidence. There was talk of a copycat. Nothing came of it. Fast forward to 2015. I was living in Pittsburgh then, married, 2 kids of my own. One October afternoon, my mom called me. She still lived in the same house out on the gravel road. She said, "Honey, someone left something on the porch." I asked what it was. Her voice shook when she answered. "A pumpkin," she said, "with your name carved into it." I told her to call the police immediately. She did. They came, took the pumpkin for prints, found nothing useful. No tire tracks, no footprints. I drove up there the next day. Mom tried to laugh it off, said maybe some kid from town found out about the old story, but I noticed she kept all the lights on, even in daylight. That night, while I was helping her close the shutters, I heard something outside, that same crunch of gravel I remembered from decades before. I went to the window. At the edge of the driveway stood a figure, tall, shoulders hunched, face flickering orange behind a carved pumpkin. For a moment, I thought it was a reflection or some trick of the yard light, but then it moved, slow and deliberate, turning its head toward the house. I shouted, ran for the door, but when I reached the porch, he was gone. No footprints, no broken stems in the grass, nothing. Just the faint, sweet-rotting smell of pumpkin hanging in the cold air. That was 10 years ago. Every Halloween since, I leave the porch light off. No decorations, no candy. Still, sometimes, usually late, I'll look out the window and swear I see a faint orange glow near the mailbox. People say urban legends grow from fear, that if you tell a story enough, it becomes part of the town. But I know what I saw.
I know the sound of gravel under slow, heavy steps. And I know this: whoever he is or was, the Pumpkin Man of Hollow Creek still walks on Halloween. This happened on October 30th, 1996, the night before Halloween. I was 27, living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and driving home from a friend's costume party about 40 miles away in Culpeper. It was almost midnight when I left, the air clear and dry, the kind that carries wood smoke and diesel down the highway. I was dressed as a pirate, nothing fancy, just a striped shirt, an eye patch pushed up on my head, and a plastic sword tossed in the back seat. The party had been good, loud music, cheap beer, laughter, but I wanted to get home before the roads iced. Route 29 at night can be lonely, just 2 long lanes cutting through farmland and forest, no streetlights, no shoulder in some stretches. I'd driven that road 100 times. I thought I knew it. I didn't. About 20 minutes south of Culpeper, I saw the first sign of trouble. A white sedan was pulled onto the side of the road, hazard lights flashing weakly. Steam drifted from under its hood. A woman stood beside it, waving her arms. I slowed down. Her car was angled awkwardly, front tire half on the grass. The woman looked to be in her late 20s, wearing a tan coat and jeans, long brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She stepped into my headlights, shielding her eyes. "Hey, please," she called. "Can you help me?" I pulled over about 15 feet ahead of her car, rolled down the window. "What's wrong?" I asked. She said her car had just died and she didn't have a phone. She asked if I could give her a ride to the next gas station. "It's only a few miles," she said. I glanced around. The night was silent except for crickets and the soft ticking of her car's hazard lights. No other cars in sight. Something about the way she kept looking past me, toward the woods, made my stomach twist. I told her, "Sure, hop in." She hesitated, just for a second, then smiled. "Thank you so much," she said, and walked toward the passenger side. That's when I saw it, a second shadow move behind her car. It was subtle, just a shift of darkness, like someone crouching low near the rear bumper. The woman didn't notice, but I did. Every instinct in me went cold. As she reached for the door handle, I said quickly, "Hold on, your car's smoking. Maybe I can take a look first." She stopped halfway in. "Oh, okay." I got out, leaving my door open, headlights still on. The air was cold enough to bite my throat. I walked toward her car slowly, pretending to check under the hood. The woman stayed by my car, watching. When I reached the back of her vehicle, I leaned slightly and looked underneath. Boots. A pair of muddy work boots sticking out from the shadow near the back tire. Someone was hiding there. My body moved before my brain caught up. I straightened fast, stepped backward, and said, as calmly as I could, "You know what? I think I see the problem. Let me grab my flashlight." I turned and walked quickly to my car. The woman's smile faltered. "Wait," she started. I slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door. The man behind her car lunged forward. I caught the motion in my mirror. Tall, wearing dark clothes, face half covered by a hood. He shouted something, maybe "stop," and the woman spun around. I hit the gas. Gravel sprayed behind my tires as I tore back onto the road. In the mirror, I saw the woman drop her act. She yelled toward the man, pointing at my car. The white sedan's hazard lights flickered faster, then went dark. I drove until my hands stopped shaking, maybe 5 miles. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it over the hum of the tires. Finally, I spotted a lit gas station up ahead, one of those 24-hour places with a single pump and an old man behind the counter.
I pulled in and parked by the door. Inside, I told him what happened. He called the county sheriff. When the deputy arrived, I described everything: the white sedan, the woman, the man hiding behind it. He nodded grimly. "You're not the first one," he said. Apparently, there had been several reports along Route 29 that month. Drivers flagged down by a woman claiming her car broke down, always at night, always near isolated stretches of road. In a few cases, the driver never came forward again. One man's truck was found abandoned on a side road with the engine running, driver's door open. They called him the Route 29 stalker in the papers.
The sheriff's office took my statement, then sent a patrol car to search the stretch where I'd stopped. They found fresh tire tracks and a pile of cigarette butts in the grass, but no car, no people. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep right. Every time I drove at night, I thought I saw that white sedan parked on the shoulder. Once, about 2 weeks later, I even saw a woman standing beside the road near Ruckersville, waving her arms the same way. Same tan coat. I didn't stop. Later that week, news broke that a woman named Alicia Showalter Reynolds had vanished while driving down Route 29. She was 25, coming home from shopping. Witnesses said they saw her talking to a man near a white car before she disappeared. Her body was found 2 months later in the woods. The suspect never caught.
Years passed, and the case faded from headlines, replaced by newer tragedies. But every October, especially near Halloween, I'd hear about another strange call or attempted stop along that road. Always the same description: a stranded driver, a tan coat, a white car. I married, moved north, and tried not to think about it. But sometimes the memory returns. Small details I can't explain. Like how the woman at the roadside had known my name. I never told the sheriff that part because I wasn't sure I'd heard it right. But when she leaned into my headlights, she'd said something like, "Please, Mark, I just need a ride." She couldn't have known my name. It wasn't on my car, and I'd never seen her before. In 2011, I went back through Virginia on a work trip and decided, against my better judgment, to drive Route 29 again. It was late October, cold and drizzling. The fields misted over. Most of the old motels were closed down. The gas stations were modern now, bright LEDs and security cameras everywhere. Still, that road felt the same. Long, empty, uneasy. About halfway between Culpeper and Charlottesville, my GPS lost signal. The radio fuzzed into static. I was alone on the stretch of highway where it had happened 15 years before. Then I saw it, ahead on the shoulder, half hidden by fog. A white car, hazard lights flashing. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. A figure stood beside it, waving. This time, I didn't slow down. As I passed, I caught a glimpse in my mirror. A man, not a woman. Tall, wearing a tan coat. His face was turned toward me, expression unreadable in the fog. And behind him, standing in the beam of his headlights, was another figure, shorter, still, head slightly tilted, as if waiting.
I sped up until I hit the next exit, pulled into a diner, sat in the parking lot shaking. My phone finally found a signal, pinging back to life. I checked the time, 12:03 a.m., officially Halloween. Out of habit, I scrolled through local news alerts. A new one popped up. Virginia State Police warn drivers of possible Route 29 imposter vehicle. Reports of multiple attempted stops between Culpeper and Ruckersville. The description matched exactly. White sedan, tan coat, male and female suspects, unknown identity. they never caught them, or whoever came after.
Now, nearly 30 years later, I still take the long way home every Halloween. And sometimes, when the road is quiet and the air smells like wet asphalt, I think about that moment, how close I came to stepping out of my car just a few seconds earlier. That's all it would have taken, a few seconds. Every year, someone else vanishes along Route 29. Not many, but enough to keep the old fear alive. The cops still get calls, though they rarely make the papers anymore. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in people who know exactly what they're doing and how to disappear. If you ever find yourself driving that road on Halloween night and you see a white car on the shoulder with its hazards blinking, a figure waving for help, keep going, because once you stop, you'll realize too late. They were never the ones stranded. You were.